After spending some quality time with Jedi Fallen Order, it's safe to say this game is a serious contender for my game of the year. But it's not without its flaws, so let's talk about it on this week's episode of Good to Know Gaming. For this review, I want to start with the negatives before I get into the bombardment of praise, because although I love this game, it's certainly not without its flaws. I'll start with the glitches, the worst of which was probably the AI. Just so many broken actions and ill-fitting dialogue that, while not game-breaking, did affect immersion. It wasn't all bad, but the first time you see a stormtrooper standing directly in front of you without attacking, the cracks start becoming more noticeable.
A worthy challenge!
There were multiple times that Cal glitched out of the map for seemingly no reason, resulting in a respawn, and although it only happened a handful of times, it simply shouldn't be happening at all for a full-price AAA title. I know other players have had performance issues, but the frame rate drops were rare for me. A far more noticeable and recurring issue was with the visuals, particularly delayed texture drop-ins. There were times I thought the game, which is otherwise stunning, had really phoned in the design on a particular part of the environment, only for the correct texture to randomly pop in long after I'd gotten a long hard look at the muddy underbelly of the design. The physics were a little wonky at times, especially in more interesting platformer-esque sections. There would be times that I would jump for a balance beam or rope and Cal would drop to his death, only for me to try the exact same thing and he would land without trouble. Inconsistent would be the best way to describe it. Another minor flaw was loading times. Although the in-game loading screens are hidden well with elevator rides and tight crawl spaces, the load time to get back into the action was Skyrim level frustrating, but without the interesting figures to endlessly spin and zoom in on. I know that there are those who have issues with the originality of this game's mechanics, but I'll touch on that later, because even with all that said, God, this game is awesome. There are things in Fallen Order that I swear I must have done 1,000 times, yet never failed to bring joy. And not complex stuff either, things like deflecting a single blaster bolt back into the face of a stormtrooper, force pushing enemies off cliffs, force pulling and stabbing enemies through the gut. Basic actions that I swear I could do for an eternity and not get bored of. Because despite the sometimes inconsistent physics, when everything is going right, controlling Cal just feels amazing. Combat is fluid and fast-paced, getting more enjoyable and creative with every upgrade perk spent. The lightsaber has a weight to it that is perfectly balanced and exactly what I had hoped it would feel like. The way you can cut through low-level enemies with a single swing makes the player feel like they're wielding a genuinely terrifying and powerful weapon, but without ever feeling too overpowered. And the force abilities pack just the right amount of punch to make you feel like the Jedi Knight you pretended to be in the playground as a kid. The atmosphere and level design is incredible. These types of games are designed to make you want to stop and look around just to take in the scenery, but Fallen Order takes this to new heights with stunning level design and a handling of scale I've not experienced before. The various maps, it's easy to charge ahead without fully taking in just how intense the space you are occupying is, but if you take the time to stop and appreciate the environment, you're treated to some incredible visuals. The collectibles aren't exactly mind-blowing as they're mostly cosmetic, which is not something I usually go for and would have saved me a good amount of time if I just ignored the chest completely. But from the very first time I found a table to customize my lightsaber at, I was hooked on finding every chest I could. The costume and ship skins I could give or take, but the lightsaber customization really sparked the Star Wars nerd in me in ways I never would have predicted. And because of this, I found exploration to be a fun and rewarding part of the experience. Lastly, the story is rich and engaging. Set between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, it does a great job of respecting the canon of the prequels without building on their negatives. This is all achieved thanks to a fantastic cast and writing team that clearly love the Star Wars franchise, but also understand what makes it such an engaging universe to spend time in. Fallen Order's campaign sits in the sweet spot of Star Wars stories for me. Just close enough to the movies to achieve a sense of connection and allow for Easter eggs, but far enough away that you aren't ever hit with a character arc that makes the universe feel small. I've purposefully avoided spoilers in this review, but there are satisfying reveals later in the game that really land well within the extended universe. Now look, I know that Fallen Order doesn't have the world's most original gameplay, and I'm also aware that everything I experienced in it went through my hefty Star Wars fanboy filter. But I think that something the game has suffered from in the press is being too heavily compared to some of the most beloved games in recent memory. And that's not denying the similarities. The puzzles are clearly Tomb Raider and the level design is clearly Uncharted, but examples of borrowed mechanics shouldn't equal a direct comparison of quality to the games it's borrowed from. No one should have been expecting the combat to be as good as Dark Souls or the upgrade-driven exploration to rival Metroid, because both of those games basically invented the genres that were then unofficially named after them. I'm not saying the criticism isn't fair because no product should be free from it, especially a game with the technical flaws of this one. But if the goal of a video game is to have a fun and immersive experience, Fallen Order most certainly achieves that. But enough of what I think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Kyle for Good to Know Gaming, and I'll see you next week.